Yeah, I think Kelvin and Tani felt like it was one of the tougher games they'd had against a backline that were a really good match for them physically. And I think it's roughly the same as we discussed post-game. We felt like there was that sense of frustration for not having won the game. It was certainly a game that we could have won, a game that we showed some signs of progress in terms of how we use the ball, how we create attacks and organised play. But ultimately we didn't do enough, and that's an area where we do have to work. We have to find ways of unlocking teams, find ways of being really ruthless and precise in the final third. But I sort of stand by what I said in that I feel like in the context of the 9 games that we played over the course of the year, there was a lot of good stuff there that has amounted to a team that is unbeaten in 8 with 5 clean sheets. So I think there's a healthy frustration there, and I think for us to be frustrated is an indicator of where we are and where we want to be, I suppose.
You spoke on Saturday about width being important for breaking down a team that's sitting back a little bit. Which positions sort of have to do more or do something different to make that happen?
No, well, we've said over the course of the season we want to make sure that we have enough consecutive passes at more points in the game to position our wing backs where we want them. I don't think that would be a giving away any secret. I think anyone that's watched us over the course of the season has seen us tread that line very finely as to whether we're attacking too quickly, meaning that we're just not connected enough as a team. We haven't got Bongi and Joe typically where we want them in really attacking, threatening positions, and when we're able to switch play, we've got to find various ways to support them, and we're not a team that is very positional, very patterned. That's not the way in which I want us to look with the ball. We want players to have liberty and freedom. We want to be unpredictable. We want to be able to attack with real dynamism, and I think as an example, the chance that we create with Carlos Harvey in the second half is a really good example of how we can create these like sort of dynamic advantages on the outside of the pitch. And you watch us over the course of 9 games, you would see many ways in which we can do that. And I don't want us to be a team that the opposition can prepare for in real detail because we're going to try and execute pattern X, Y, or Z repeatedly. We want to be a team with the ball that's unpredictable. And I think over the course of the last 3 games, we've seen some really good signs of that. But unfortunately, in the last 2, it's not resulted in really clean-cut chances.
Sort of playing off that, as more guys go forward, obviously there's more transitional defense you have to play. What are sort of the coaching points you give?
Yeah, it's. I don't want to be a team that is so conservative with the ball that we don't find ways of creating those types of opportunities. And of course, where we're not a very positional, rigid team when we've got the ball, it means that there's some unpredictability as to who's going to be where when the ball turns over. So you see with Joaquin and Rob, we give them a lot of freedom, we give them a lot of rope to help us find solutions on the ball, and as a consequence it's difficult for me to say with certainty who's going to be where when the ball turns over and how well set we're going to be. And you say the same for the way in which we use Carlos and Jeff and Nico and Morris and those guys. So it's a communication thing, it's a understanding of principles thing, and it's reading situations moment to moment. And I would say so far, fortunately, albeit the game of the day became one that was open and it was stretched, I don't think we've really suffered in that sense. And I think the biggest thing that I would pat the players on the back for in that second half was the intensity with which they recovered. You saw some interceptions on the top of the box from 60 or 70 yard recovery runs from players like Joaquin, and that's a really important part of what we do. If we're going to commit players forward, we've got to be willing to run back, which is so far not a problem.
How do you look at Vancouver so far this year? Obviously first place, and have had some big wins in CONCACAF as well.
Yeah, it's difficult for us to read exactly how they'll look this weekend, because I feel like this is as difficult a period as they've had in terms of having to. They've had quick turnarounds, but this is a really quick turnaround when you consider that they play 9:30 tonight our time, 2 o'clock on Sunday, and then they go and play again on Wednesday. So I think they've done exceptionally well to get to the point that they've got to with 2 competitions, and they're at the latter stages of this one now, and they're above us in the table. So we can only pay them the utmost respect, and we'll wait to see the team sheet on Sunday as to the very specifics of the messages we give to the players. But certainly a good team, and one that we'll have to be at our best to beat, irrespective of who they play, I'm sure.
How much scouting will go into that as you kind of find out whatever an hour beforehand. And how
Yeah, well, we do prepare in real detail for the opposition. We know the opposition inside out. We're not one of those teams that changes a great deal based upon how the opposition play. I don't think you've seen a lot of consistency with what we try and do over the course of the year. It's more the subtleties, and we'll have a good idea of the options that they'll have, and we'll have a good idea as to what their selection means in terms of some of the real specifics for some of our players. And we're pretty adept at acting in the moment when we get team sheets in, and the players are pretty responsive to us in those moments. So yeah, it'll be interesting, and I'll certainly watch their game tonight with interest.
It seemed like Kelvin was getting a little frustrated as the game wore on. What do you have to do to get him back on track?
It's not dissimilar to the situation he found himself in last year, where he had a flurry of goals and real success, and not that he took anyone by surprise this year, of course, but naturally life is very difficult for Tanny and Kelvin, because the opposition will spend, I'm sure, 60% of their working week talking about how they're going to deal with the front two, how they're going to deal with a set play threat like ours, and as a consequence life becomes much more difficult for you week to week. And I think we have to then be very adaptable. We have to be a team that can find other ways of unlocking teams relative to how we have over the course of the first 6 or 7 games. But that doesn't worry me to an extent, because I feel like we've got some inbuilt flexibility in our team. You look at the goal that we scored against New York after 50 seconds, that would have been a goal that they would have prepared all week for, to not concede, and sometimes it is just very difficult not to do so. So I feel like we know what we are, we know what we do well. We have a plan B and plan C in the back of our mind should things continue to be dry in front of goal. But at the moment I'm not worried in that sense, and I wouldn't have thought those two are neither. I think the biggest thing for them is that they keep that the relentlessness in terms of how they work, the relentlessness in terms of how they run in behind, the connection between the two of them, and we get them some good service, and that's all.